Hello, my name is Tim Hart, and I'd like to welcome you to the New Horizons Foster Parent Cybersecurity Training, where we'll be covering ways to keep your family safe in cybersecurity. We hope you enjoy this training.
Now, the first section that we're going to go over in our cybersecurity training is going to be for passwords. Now, passwords really are the most common thing you're going to encounter in your security journey, and basically that's because everybody has a password. Whether it's the same password they've used for the last 10 years, or maybe they just had to think of a new one a couple weeks ago, everybody really has one. But the real question is do you really need a password? Um, the obvious answer is, of course, yes, you do need a password. Even though you can set up these systems without passwords on them, whether it's your phone or your computer, you absolutely need a password. You have a key to your house, you have a key to your car. They put combinations on safes. These are places where people put things that they want to protect inside of. And these keys and combinations, and in our case, passwords, is what we use to protect things. And in our case, the things that we're protecting is information. So I provided some examples on the screen of what some passwords could be. Now, for the first four, I would recommend not using those passwords at all. Basically, any letter combination you can think of that has password inside of it is going to be so easily cracked, not just by the number of attempts it would take, just because it's so common that systems will try this password first instead of actually having to go through each individual combination. So like you would have password, that's 8 characters long. That'll even meet some people's requirements for passwords. For ours is at least 8 characters, upper and lower case, with a number or symbol. So that would not match for ours. If you look one down, password with a capital P, now that's upper and lower case. It's also still 8 characters long. So if that wasn't a commonly used password, that would take 3 hours, give or take, for a machine to crack. If you add a symbol to that, P @ capital S lowercase s WORD, that's going to take 57 days. If you add a number to that, and I know it doesn't look like it, but the O inside password is actually a 0. So that's 8 characters long, upper and lower case, symbols and numbers. That would take 928 years, or excuse me, 57 days. 57 days to crack that password. The next one down, SneezeCat8, very fancy looking password, is 928 years. Now, SneezeCat8 is what I think people think of their password has to be when someone says, hey, you need a strong password. Just because it looks like it's hard to type, it is hard to type and it looks complicated. It sounds kind of cool, but it's a pain in the butt if you have to use it every day. But it does take 928 years for it to get hacked. Now, the next one down past that, Purple People Eaters, that's actually 18 characters long, and it has a capital letter in it. So if you look at the chart right next to it, 18 characters with upper and lower case, that's 1 trillion years. And I think, honestly, it would be easier to type and remember that password than it would be to remember SneezeCat8. So with that, you have some options. It doesn't have to be the most complex, ridiculous thing to type out. It can be your favorite phrase. It can be lots of things, but there are some limitations that you want to add to that. You don't want to have it be your wife's name, your brother's name, things that are on Facebook, things that people can find out about you, like the type of car you drive or the year you were born, things like that. Those types of combinations are things you don't want to add into a password just because it makes it that much easier for someone else to find out what it could be. So going through some of our password best practices. Change your passwords regularly, every 60 to 90 days. The reason why we ask you to do that is because if that password were used somewhere else and they got hacked and got your login credentials, they could then try and use that password to log into our systems. So every 60 to 90 days kind of cuts that short. And if they tried to crack your password, if we're changing every 60 to 90 days, that also means that you don't have to have as long of or as a complex of password. So it's kind of a mitigation, a common ground, something that's easy for you and it's easy for us. But we also still recommend use a long and or complex password. Like I was saying before, I don't think Purple People Eaters is very hard to remember or very hard to type out. Now, for our use case, it wouldn't actually match our rules because we do require numbers and symbols. But just as an example, it doesn't have to be some asinine password. You can make it simple, and you can make it long. That's really all that it needs to be. Don't write your passwords down. Please don't do this. I've seen people do this. I used to do it a very long time ago before I got into the field, but it's really just one of those things that it's just not good. Because somewhere along the line, that book you put it in, the note under your keyboard, the sticky note on your monitor, someone's going to see it and someone's going to try it. And once that happens, any sense of security that you have, and realistically, any security that you had for the information will be lost. If it's in social media, don't put it in your password. Those are things that is easy to guess. Someone's kid's name, someone's dog's name. And I mean, they'll go through and try these passwords on these people's accounts just because that's what people do. That's what's in people's nature. Something that's easy for them. And that's why it's so easy. Never use the same password twice. That means for work, for Netflix, Amazon, wherever you have that password, don't use the same one twice, and don't use one that you used before somewhere else thinking that, oh, well, I used this one here last time, or this is one of my other passwords that I haven't used here in a while, because eventually it'll get you in trouble, or it'll get your information in trouble. And last but certainly not least, do not give your password to anyone, not even to IT. That means myself, Tim, maybe someone else's IT. No one is going to ask for your password. We don't need your password to do anything. That password is there in our retrospect for accountability. So if you give us your password, we can act on your behalf without having to use our tools. That password makes it to where we have to use our tools and there's a log showing what we've done. But beyond just IT, don't share your password with your neighbor. Don't share your password with the person at the bus station. Don't share your password with people you don't trust, and you should be very careful with the people that you do with this sort of information. You're basically saying you trust this person to act on your behalf on everything that happens on that computer because that's what it will look like. Because to us, you're the person that signed in. You're the person that's accessing. It's not going to be like, oh, well, it took a picture of the person that was accessing the computer. That doesn't happen. It's based off of who signed in, which password was entered, and if it was correct or not. And if it was correct, it lets that person on. And for all intensive purposes, that person is you, whether you put it in or not. Now that everyone has hopefully changed all of their passwords, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next section, which is going to be viruses, malware, ransomware, and phishing. These are all types of attacks that you can and may even succumb to in your lifetime. Now, malware, which is basically, it came from two words, malicious and software, and it's basically a general term that encompasses software specifically designed to disrupt damage, or gain unauthorized access to a computer system. Some of the effects of malware that you may see are pop-ups, programs that don't act the way that you know that they should. An example of a phishing attack would be like a strange email, and files won't open. Usually, if the files aren't opening and there's another prompt that says pay money, that means that you've been subject to a ransomware attack. But let's look into these all a little bit deeper and see what they all really are. Now, ransomware is typically a type of malicious software designed to block access to a computer system until a sum of money is paid. Sometimes that's not always the case. Sometimes people just do it just for fun or to watch the world burn, and there's really nothing you can do. Basically, what happens is your data gets encrypted, and you'll receive a prompt like this that says, hey, pay us in Bitcoin, so basically no one can trace it, and we'll send you a key to unlock your data. Well, what happens sometimes is people pay, but they never get their key back, their data gets lost, or maybe they just never had the key to begin with, and someone's just having a good time. Now, recently, some ransomware has been broken, so the private key is already out there, and you can go ahead and unencrypt your data. But that's not always the case, and you should never count on that. Now, usually ransomware will be combined with another form of attack, usually a way of it getting on your system, because it's not going to be there by default. You're going to have to do something that makes this happen. Moving on past ransomware is going to be viruses. Now, a virus is a piece of code which can copy itself and typically has a detrimental effect such as corrupting the system or destroying data, but first must be activated. Now, when it says that it copies itself, what that means is that it could copy itself to a different location on your computer. It may copy itself into an email. And there's lots of different things that it can do, but more often than not, you have to be the driving factor in this. It's something that you did that makes it to where it can run. It basically doesn't have the privilege to run on your system and it requires your authorization. Now, a worm is sort of like a virus, except for the fact that there's nothing you can do about it in form of prevention. Once it's already there, it's already going to run itself. Usually you'll get these through an email chain or even sometimes just from a website. And really a worm is one of the worst ones out there because what's going to happen is you're going to get it and then it's going to send it to everybody on your network and then everybody on their network. And it propagates really quickly to a lot of people. Now a Trojan is a type of virus that at first glance looks like a legitimate piece of software, but it's really malware. It may look like a driver or this really cool Photoshop program that you wanted to use, or just anything. It could really look like anything, but it's not always what it says it is, hence why it's called a Trojan. Because once you run it, it'll start infecting your computer as a virus. So when we say you need to be careful about what you download, make sure you trust what you run on your computer. We let you use computers for your personal use, and that's perfectly fine. But when you do, be sure that you're keeping track of what you're doing, what you're downloading, and making sure that you stay safe so it keeps everything on the system safe. Because it's just not you that it could affect. It could affect lots of different people. Now, another form of attack that you may see is a phishing attack. Now, phishing is an email that is sent to solicit information from you that you normally wouldn't or shouldn't give out. Usually, this will be in an email, but later on we'll also talk about other types of phishing attacks that people may text to you, they may call you, and these are all technically a phishing attack. But basically, it's made in such a way that you don't really think about what you're doing. And there's either a sense of urgency or there's a sense of, hey, this is something that I really should be doing. But either the person that sent it to you or something just doesn't add up. So if you send out your passwords or you send out, some information that you shouldn't, that's when you've fallen victim to a phishing attack. And basically, to bring it all together, this is basically what it would look like for a phishing attack. This is like your boss at fakeyourcompany.com. Mind you, this actually wouldn't be what it would say. It would say Jeremy Wade at newhorizonsinc.com, but it may have an acrylic character in there somewhere that differentiates it from the regular my email address. Now, if you notice in this email it says, hey, don't respond back to the email that you know me at, just respond back to this email, because they know that if you forward this to the correct person, they're going to be like, yeah, I didn't do that, and just have some common sense. Now, for New Horizons ourselves, we actually add on to the bottom of every email that's not inside of the newhorizonsinc.com domain a notice that says, hey, this is not from inside New Horizons. Be careful what you're doing. So it's more of a hey, pay attention. Did this person say there's someone who needs this information? Should I be sending it to them because it'll go outside of New Horizons? So I mean, it's really a marker from us that says, hey, this is not from the inside, so you want to watch out. All right, and next we're going to be going over VPNs, encryption, and two-factor authentication, or 2FA. Now, a VPN is a virtual private network, and there are several different types of VPNs, split tunnel or full tunnel, but they both function similarly. Now, New Horizons right now does not use a VPN, but it's always helpful to know these things in case in the future you come across one, or maybe we will use a VPN. But what happens is that all your network traffic that passes through the VPN gets encrypted. So in this case, we'll say a split tunnel. What happens is that, say you were trying to access the New Horizons systems. All of your traffic that would be directed towards New Horizons would go over the split tunnel, getting encrypted, while all of the traffic, say that you went to YouTube or whatever personal traffic you sent that wasn't directed towards New Horizons, would just go out your regular connection and not be encrypted by the VPN. Alternatively, a full tunnel means that everything that you do will be sent across the VPN. So if it was going to New Horizons, that means that all of your New Horizons traffic, as well as all of your YouTube, Netflix, and whatever traffic would come through us first before it goes anywhere else. So that just may be one thing you want to look at if you're using a split tunnel or a full tunnel when deciding what you're actually doing when you're on the internet. Now, encryption, most people have an idea of what encryption is, and it's pretty simple, but it's basically a way of putting in code your messages. So in this case, it says hello, but when it's been encrypted, it turns into ciphertext, which basically the party on the other end has the key, they decode the message, and they process all the data. Similarly speaking to a VPN, HTTPS, which is Hypertext Transfer Protocol, secure, it uses a certificate provided by a trusted source to encrypt data. However, only the information entered into that website is encrypted. This is notated by the lock symbol next to the Uniform Resource Locator, or URL, which is basically the web address. Past that, you have two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication. Now, two-factor or multi-factor authentication allows you to secure your password with an additional level of security. This may look like a text that gets sent to you or an email that gets sent to your account saying, hey, enter in this code or click this to show that this is actually you. No additional security is provided to your internet transactions. It's basically an additional level of security that's provided for your password. So say your password was cracked, if you had two-factor or multi-factor authentication, they would then also have to basically crack your cell phone or already have access to the email address that you assigned to your two-factor. to then get access to your other systems. Next up is going to be hardware and software precautions. Now, some people may ask, what is hardware and what is software? Your hardware is going to be really what is physical, what you can hold. So your computer, your laptop, your monitor, a keyboard, some form of device. A software is what that device runs, say Windows or Word. Now, how do you keep both your hardware and your software safe? Because they both can be kept safe individually. What we're going to say is just lock it and lock it. If you can just remember that, you'll be way ahead of everyone else. So for your hardware, for your computer, for your phone, make sure that it's locked up when you're done with it. Make sure you know where it's at. So at the end of the day, you lock it in your house, you lock it in the trunk of your car. That way the physical system itself or the physical device itself is safe. For software, whether it's your iOS on your iPhone or it's your Windows operating system, we want you to lock it. That means for Windows, press the Windows key and the L button together. That will lock the operating system so that it requires a password for the next person that comes into contact with that system. For your phone, usually it's you click the side button, it'll lock itself so that you have to enter the passcode into the phone to have access to it. Now beyond that, some people think that just closing the laptop lid locks their computer. And in some cases that's true, but that doesn't always happen. So really you want to make sure that you press the Windows key and plus L before you close the screen. You lock it, close the screen. Now for our systems, we do require you to have both a passcode for your phone as well as a password for your system. It's important because what happens is if you left that device out and say it wasn't locked or you locked it and it didn't require a password, then someone else that you don't trust could have access to it. And that goes into don't use it if you don't trust it. Now there's lots of different things out there that you can come into contact with that you just need to be careful with. One of those is someone else's computer. Don't necessarily trust every computer that you use and think that it's safe. In the same vein, don't let just anyone use your work computer if you don't trust them, because more often than not, people will have their passwords saved inside their computers, which I don't advise, because what happens is that once someone does gain access to that system, they've basically been given the keys to the kingdom. They'll have your Kaleidocare logins, they'll have your credit card logins, they'll have pretty much whatever that you have saved. So at least by having that passcode on the system and making sure it's physically secure, that will prevent the physical device itself from being compromised. Beyond that, USB drive. Don't trust just any USB drive. You can get viruses in a software version. You can also get viruses that attack your hardware. This is done by installing a virus in the boot sector of your hard drive so that even before Windows boots up, it already has that virus installed and it's already running in the background. And it's a lot harder to find out about it and much less do anything about it besides wiping the entire system. Another form of hardware virus is a virus that attacks the BIOS of the system itself. This is basically the system that tells your system how to run. Once that gets infected with something, there's really nothing that we can do about it, much less if we were lucky enough to find out about it. So just be extremely careful with USB drives. If you find yourself in need of a USB drive, come to us and we'll get you one. Don't just trust anybody's USB drive. Someone's phone and your own phone. Lock your phone. It makes the most sense and it's really the easiest thing to do. You press the side button and it locks itself. Super easy. You keep it with you at all times. You probably sleep next to it. That part's simple. So just keep your phone safe. Don't trust everybody's phone. You don't know what that person's been doing in their personal time or their non-personal time with that phone. They could be infected with something and not even know it. So just be careful what devices you use to do what on. If you're doing work, try and use work devices as much as possible unless you explicitly trust a device that's been handed to you, preferably by a coworker, to do something on. Now, you're always going to have those emergency situations where you need to do something right then. Just think about it for a second and make sure that if it can wait, to wait. If not, evaluate the situation before you proceed. Just think about it. Software. Don't trust everything out there. That's going to be a recurring theme about this section itself. If you see a piece of software that sounds too good to be true, it's going to do all your work for you, it's going to make life super easy, and it's just going to be one click. That's probably not going to work out well for you. And it's not going to work out well for us, because if you get infected, that's basically all of your data and all of our data has the potential to be compromised. Now, if you have questions on software, you can come to us. Those are the easy questions. Just, hey, can I use this? Or what do you recommend for this? Where can I find this? Those are easy questions. Don't be afraid to come and ask us that sort of stuff. In the same vein, software that someone else has. Don't always trust something that's running on someone else's system. Hotspot. Free Wi-Fi. Free Wi-Fi is one of the best and worst things out there. It's the best thing out there because it's free and you don't have to pay for it. Usually it's pretty convenient because it's at a coffee shop, but it's one of the worst things out there because you don't know who's listening. Say you're at a coffee shop and you're accessing Kaleidocare. Generally speaking, your Kaleidocare traffic is going to be encrypted, so there's not too much you have to worry about the data that you put into the system, but that doesn't mean that there's not someone else on that hotspot listening in, finding out where you're going, kind of what you're doing, and narrowing it down to which computer it is. So maybe they're canvassing the area, trying to find a good laptop to steal, or something that may have some information on it that they can sell. These are things that people do, and it's not even that hard. The other issue with hotspots is that you don't even know if this is the hotspot that you're trying to connect to. You may have been going to the same coffee shop for years, it's the same Wi-Fi password, the same Wi-Fi name, your computer just automatically connects to it, you don't even have to interact with it. But what can happen is someone can create a counterfeit hotspot with that same name or password and intercept all of your traffic. So anything that you do in that sense, you can consider that they have that information. Any username or password, any data that gets put in, you're sending that data to someone else and not even to the right hotspot, and you wouldn't even necessarily know it. So just keep an open mind about things. Do you really need to use a hotspot? I mean, probably not. More than likely you have a work cell phone. Your work cell phone is going to have a personal hotspot. Use the hotspot on your phone. There's no need to use your Starbucks free Wi-Fi to access Kaleidocare. You can set it up on your phone to where your computer can connect to it automatically, so you don't even have to worry about it. You just turn it on and make sure you're connected to the right one. Websites. Kind of in the same vein as software, but don't trust every website. In an earlier slide, we were looking at HTTPS. Really, that's important, but it's not the end-all be-all. You really just want to make sure of where you're going because it's not always the website itself. If that website is serving an ad, you don't even have to click on the ad. You can get a virus or a malware can automatically download itself in the background and you wouldn't even know it. So if you're sticking to a reputable website, they're going to actually go through their ads and look at, hey, we probably shouldn't put this on there because this link goes to a virus, whether it, or if it's, or websites. So with websites, this is one of those things. We went over HTTPS, So you know, hey, this website's secure, but that's just the information that you're putting into the website is secure. That doesn't mean that you can't get a virus from that website. Just because it says HTTPS doesn't mean that it's safe. The S stands for secure, not for safe. So you could be on an HTTPS website and see an ad. That ad could automatically download something into the background. If you want to get real deep into it, there's actually a thing where those ads will play certain tonal sounds that will hack Bluetooth of other devices. So you really should just be careful about where you're going. Do you trust this website? If so, do you trust to do it on a work computer? Because there's so many things that can happen and not all of them are within your control. I say that, but it really is within your control to go to Kaleidocare, to go to work websites, but we give you these computers with the notion that, hey, you can use them for your personal needs, but maintain security. You want to maintain that security so you keep the information safe. And when you're keeping the information that you have access to safe, you're helping everyone. Moving on, we're going to be talking about social engineering. Now, social engineering is, in essence, hacking a person. You're convincing that person to do something or to say something that they shouldn't. Now, the weakest link in most security systems, be it IT, physical security, it's going to be the person, someone making a decision. And generally, people want to make a decision that's going to either help someone else that they think is the right thing to do, or they want to make their job easier and quicker and just move on to the next thing. And these are both things that could be good, but also could be bad. So you just need to take a second and think about the person that you're coming into contact with. If A, they are who they say they are, that they're asking something appropriate, and that you think that you should actually give them that information. Because you can always say, you know, I don't feel comfortable giving you this information. Why don't you go talk to so and so? Or why don't I call you back on a number that I can verify that's actually for said company or for said person? Because a lot of times people lie, and that's just an easy way to be deceived, is just to be naive and trust everything that everyone says. So in the steps of the social engineering life cycle, step 1 is going to be information gathering. Now, this is going to be when it says cyber criminals, but really this could be Facebook, this could be in person, this could be over the phone. This is going to be them researching their targets and finding out, you know, hey, who is in the finance department for this company, or who is in the IT department? Who is going to have control? Because control gives them power. That says, hey, if I say I'm this person and they believe I'm this person, then they're going to give me what I'm asking. Step 2 is going to be establish a relationship. Now it says time to fabricate a manipulative storyline via phone or email, gaining trust. So once they have that trust, they've basically won. They've convinced you or someone else to say, hey, this person is who they say they are based on what they said, not based on anything that you've actually verified. And once they have that trust and they have that power, they can exploit you. So in the process of that, they impersonate someone else. Now, they can make it stressful. They may be funny. I mean, there's all different sorts. You can't just expect them to be the most demanding person ever, and if you don't do this, then, you know, you're fired. It's not always going to sound like that. They could be the most charming person you've ever met, but that doesn't mean that they are who they say they are. And once they've gotten the information from you, that basically there's no trace. There's that record of, oh, well, I talked to so and so on the phone, and they can look up that phone number, but that phone number could be fake. You know, they may not ever be able to find that person to get back what was taken. So really what you have to look out for is, 1, watch what you post on social media. Watch what's out there for your company. Are the contact numbers for your executives, for your finance department, for your CPA, are these listed where people can either impersonate those people, impersonate those numbers? And I mean, those may be out there for a reason because they need to be, and that's okay. But if they are, you have to realize that, hey, this is information that someone else can have. So say if the head CEO were to call you and say, I need this done, and I need it forwarded to this address, send this here, give me this information. And if it came over on a number that you don't realize, just think for a second. Do I trust this person? Does it sound like them? I mean, is it coming in on a number that you recognize? Maybe call that person back. Email that person back at a number that you can, at an email address that you can verify. I mean, there's all different ways at your disposal that you can use to verify they are who they say they are. And if you can't, that should really be the end of the discussion. There's no trust in the relationship, therefore, no information should be provided. It would be the same thing if a foster parent, or not a foster parent, but a separated parent were to call in trying to find information on a kid. That's HIPAA. You may or may not be able to give that information to them. It's the same thing for any other types of information. You want to apply the highest level of standard that you can so that you're protecting everything. Because once one thing is exploited, that may just give them one leg up to the next step. But eventually, they'll get to the person that has the most power, the most control over a system, and they'll be able to exploit it in such a way that they'll get the most benefit out of that. And usually, that's going to happen at our expense, which is not good. Not good for our kids, not good for our company. Now, another point of view you can take to look at social engineering are preventative measures that you can take. These are things that are, what am I posting on Facebook? What am I sending out in emails? Am I providing an avenue for someone to social engineer someone else? Maybe your Facebook is set to public. Maybe your social medias have too much information about who you are and what you do and the nitty-gritty specifics that give someone access. So you want to be careful about what you share in your personal lives that could affect your work lives from a security perspective, much less anything else with the type of work that we do working with kids. All right, foster parents, we're almost done, I promise. We just want to talk about a few more things just to make sure you're ready for your cybersecurity journey and really about protecting any child that you have or even your own family from cybersecurity threats and cyber access, because that's really what this section is about, is cyber access, computer access, and that goes hand in hand with Internet of Things, IoT. What that means is that most devices nowadays are going to be connected. You have your Alexas, you have your computers, laptops, cell phones, most of the gaming systems are going to have internet connections. So there's lots of things that you have to watch out for. Now, you may not have had any experience before in setting up a wireless network. Maybe you didn't used to have internet at your house, but now you have this child that has this need. So we're going to have a quick tutorial about how to set up internet access, and then we're going to talk about a few things. So starting out, what's going to happen is usually the cable company or the phone company will give you a box. It's called a modem, and you connect that modem to a router. The ports will usually be color-coded, so you kind of have the right idea, but there should be instructions that can tell you which wires to plug in where, and that'll get you off and going. Once you actually get it up and started and you get logged into it, you may come to a page that looks like this. All the pages are going to be a little bit different between the manufacturers, but typically it'll have this information. So it'll tell you what your internet IP address is that your provider gave to you. It'll tell you maybe what your MAC address is, which is like a physical identifier for your device. And then it'll give you the options to configure it. And that's what we want to talk about, is how to configure it to keep your children safe. So let's take a look at it. Now, in this case, you have the 2.4 gigahertz and the 5 gigahertz. What those are Wi-Fi bands. So the 2.4 gigahertz is typically slower, but it'll broadcast further and it goes through walls a lot better than the 5 gigahertz. But the 5 gigahertz is faster. So depending on your home layout, that'll be an option that you'll need to consider. And then the network name, or the SSID, that's just a general name that you want to call your network, like the Fosters or the whatevers. There's lots of funny Wi-Fi names out there. You can name it whatever you want. And most routers will give you the option to hide that SSID. What that means is the router is advertising that SSID generally. So whenever you look on your computer and it scans for Wi-Fi networks, those are devices that are broadcasting SSIDs. They're saying, hey, I have this here. So if you check that, your router won't broadcast that anymore. And then to connect a device to that, what you have to do is tell the device, look for this name and this password, and then it'll connect. I would advise against this though, because generally speaking, it doesn't do much. It's just a small layer of security that really doesn't do much, because your devices are going to give that away. Because the way that it actually works is that while your router isn't broadcasting, hey, give me this SSID, or hey, I have this SSID, your phone or your device is saying, hey, I want to connect to this SSID. Here's the SSID name and the SSID password. And it's doing this constantly. Not even when you're necessarily in range of that Wi-Fi device. It could be asking, like in the car on your way to work. It could be doing it a lot. So it's not necessarily any safer. So I would just recommend not checking it. Now, when it comes to password, you're going to want to set a password, so none really should not be an option for you. Unless you absolutely know that all your devices are locked down and you really want to go that route, I would really advise against none though. You're going to have WPA, WPA2 Personal, WPA, WPA2 Enterprise. Now Enterprise, it may sound fancy, and it sort of is, and it may sound better, and it is to a degree, but it requires an additional setup that you may not have the ability to do. You'll have to run a server, which is called a Radius server, and it stores authentication information that your router will connect to and say, hey, okay, this person and this Wi-Fi password matches, so we'll let them on. And if you don't have either the technical know-how, the hardware, there's lots of different things that go into it that you may not have. So it may just be easier for you just to stick with personal, just because personal is what I'm going to recommend. Now you will see that there is one more listed, WEP. I don't recommend WEP. WEP makes things a little too easy for someone that's inside your house. Now, that make it easier for you, but if you have a child that you don't want to connect to the internet, but you want them to have a device, this could be like a Kindle Fire that you only connect whenever you want it to, and then you delete the Wi-Fi information off of it. So if you had WEP, what that means is there is a button, usually on your router, that you can push that's going to generate a code that they can type in that'll connect them to the internet, or connect them to the router, rather. And that's not what you want, because that device then will be connected. And unless you're keeping 24/7 tabs as far as what devices are connected and really who's on those devices, then the best way for you is going to be WPA, WPA2 Personal. Now you can add a guest network if you want. You can even add it with no password, but really if you add anything with no password, there's really no point if you're trying to keep it away from your kids. Maybe they're not ready. Maybe there's some teens or adults in your family that aren't ready. So I would always recommend putting a password on. And really, in this instance, I'll explain it. The guest network is basically a second isolated network. Say if you have computers, TVs, or printers on your home network and you have guests over and you don't necessarily want them to be able to see those devices, you just want to give them internet access. That's what that's for. It's a separate network that doesn't have access to your original network, but it still lets them connect to the internet. Now I don't have a picture of the advanced section, and really I didn't put one because it's going to vary so much from model to model as far as which router you get, but usually they will have some type of parental controls. Sometimes that's time-based, so it'll only let certain devices connect from a certain time to a certain time, or it may actually look at the data inside your Wi-Fi network, the traffic that's being generated. It may look for specific words and block sites that contain those. There's lots of different things it can do. But generally speaking, I wouldn't count on the router itself, the services it provides, as a one-stop shop for security for a child, because they'll find ways around it. So, but there's also all sorts of different types of products you can have out there that will monitor systems, that will not let systems connect. And it's just something that you may want to look into. You know, if you're getting someone that needs access to the internet, you know, you want to make sure that they stay safe. You don't want them to necessarily get into something that they can't handle. You know, they may not even be looking for that sort of thing, but maybe an ad pops up and they accidentally clicked on something and then they're in a whole new world. And now are you. So it's just one thing to watch out for. And with that, you know, that child may come with a device. You know, they may come with a cell phone. They may come with a gaming device. You know, I can't say what they will or they won't come with. So that's just something that you're going to want to look at, you know. And by setting up that password beforehand or even after the fact, that lets you know what's connected and so on. And with that, that's another thing. You know, these gaming systems and cell phones, laptops, computers, once they're connected, they can go really anywhere unless you have measures in place. So really, you need a game plan before the fact so you kind of have an idea of what you want to do. Do you want to let them connect? Do you not want to let them connect? You know, is school good enough or is not? I know nowadays with COVID-19, there's lots of, I don't want to say telehealth, but basically teleschool. But I know that nowadays they're doing school electronically for some classes, kind of like college was, but now it's actually for high school or middle school or elementary school, where you'll sit the kid down and they'll get on the computer to attend school. But that's just one more thing that you're going to have to watch out for, because if you leave them on a device that's connected, you're basically giving them access, if they so desired, to go wherever they wanted. So it's just something to keep in mind to monitor their use, monitor their devices, and it's not like you're keeping track of their devices and their usage to get them in trouble. You're keeping track of their usage to keep them safe, because there's things out there that maybe they don't need to know, people they don't need to contact, or things they don't need to see. There's so many things out there that can harm them that you should be looking at to keep them safe.